Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk back into the video today, and today I'm going to be talking about the Los Angeles Clippers potentially signing Chris Paul. A couple weeks ago, it was reported that the Clippers are interested in signing a couple potential veteran point guards to replace Russell Westbrook, who they plan on moving on from this offseason. Chris Paul and Kyle Lowry were the two guys who were named as potential candidates to bring in to replace Russell Westbrook and bring in veteran point guards this offseason. Obviously, you're not going to bring in both guys, but either or two guys who the Clippers are interested in this offseason. And I've already talked about Kyle Lowry potentially joining the Clippers. I think that's the right move to go because Kyle Lowry, it's not just Kawhi Leonard that that's not the only former teammate of his on this Clippers roster. So that's one thing for me. But I feel like if this is a Clippers team who wants to win, right? This is a Clippers team that wants to win championships. Kyle Lowry has that winning experience. He has the championship experience. Going to the NBA Finals with the Miami Heat recently. Yes, they did lose to the Denver Nuggets, but made a Finals run with the Miami Heat. And the season before was the 1 seed with the Miami Heat and made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. So two great playoff runs with the Miami Heat, and obviously his NBA Finals championship win against the Toronto Raptors, that championship was won with who other than Kawhi Leonard. But it's not just Kawhi Leonard that is his only former teammate on this team. Also, you have someone else like, you have Norman Powell, who played in Toronto played in Toronto with Kyle Lowry. So they were teammates for quite a while. And then also PJ Tucker played a season with Kyle Lowry in Miami where they were the 1 seed. Both guys were starters. PJ Tucker starting at power forward, Kyle Lowry starting at point guard. I'm trying to figure out, I think Kyle Lowry and James Harden just missed each other in Houston. Kyle Lowry's last year in Houston was the 2011-12 season, and James Harden's first season in Houston was the 2012-13 season. So him and James Harden just missed each other in Houston. So they were almost teammates in Houston. But yeah, Lowry was drafted by the Rockets, then left the Rockets after that 2011-12 season. And then after the 2011-12 season, James Harden was traded to the Rockets. So Harden and Lowry have not been teammates, which was something I was wondering. I didn't know that for sure yet, but now I know. All right, so you got 3 former teammates of his on this Clippers roster. That's one thing, him being an NBA champion as well. But I want to get into Chris Paul. I'm done with Kyle Lowry. I think if you're going to choose between the two of those, or bringing those two guys in, I think Kyle Lowry is the main choice. Number one, 3 reasons why I think that the 3 former teammates on this roster, he's cheaper, I believe. If Chris Paul is released by the Golden State Warriors, which I don't know if that will happen. That has to happen for this to happen. But if Chris Paul is released by the Warriors, even though he is older, I feel like Chris Paul is going to command more money. You can sign Kyle Lowry to the vet minimum or at the most of $1 or $2 million. Because yes, he's older. I think, yes, both of these guys are older players, but Chris Paul, even though he is almost 40 years old, he is more of an impact player at his age right now than Kyle Lowry is. Chris Paul is still a great facilitator. He's still not bad at scoring. Really, the only problem you could say with Chris Paul is injuries in his career right now. Chris Paul is still a great player, and I don't think he's going to ask for a lot of money if potentially signed by the Clippers, but I think he would cost more. But let's get into Chris Paul. Honestly, I haven't watched the show yet. I don't even know what it's called, but there's a Clippers show that's just been released, and it is terrible. I've heard from people it's terrible. I have a cousin who's a Clippers fan, and he won't even watch it, and he thinks it's absolutely terrible. He said he watched the first episode. He said he regretted watching the first episode. He's not going to watch the rest of it. Was just disgusted. I mean, the casting is absolutely terrible. They casted Rodney Hood's lookalike as Chris Paul. But it's crazy to me that they make this show about a team that couldn't even get out of the second round. Look, Lob City was great. Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, and DeAndre Jordan and Doc Rivers as their head coach, and obviously you got some other players on that team that were great players. They were great, right? That's a great team. I think that's one of the best. I think you can find if you're going to pick maybe 5 or 10, and there are 5 to 10 teams that never made an NBA Finals. They're in the top 5 or the top 10 of that list. That never, not saying never won an NBA championship, never made it to the NBA Finals or never made it to conference finals. That's a great team right there. Chris Paul, with how good he is, I'm not saying he's not good anymore, but how good he was then, and then obviously Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan and Doc Rivers. That's a team I never will understand how they didn't have more success. Maybe Doc Rivers played a huge part into that. I think a lot of us would come up with that idea. But honestly, just thinking in my head, if that show comes out, I mean, honestly, if a show was made about me as a player losing, I mean, I'm just thinking about in the Chris Paul, what he might be thinking. After that show made about, basically, I mean, what do you show? The regular season wins, and I mean, I'm not gonna watch the show, but what do you show? Oh, we dominate the regular season. We're a great regular season team. Did they not just show the playoffs? Next season, they talk about the playoffs. You have to show the playoff losses, right? So basically, there is a show that's just been made about him losing on the Clippers. I mean, why not join the Clippers and win to show them, hey, you know what, I can win in Los Angeles with the Clippers. But, there's one thing I did think about when I thought about this potential Chris Paul with the Clippers signing is James Harden. As a Rockets fan, James Harden and Chris Paul were great together in Houston. It's something, even though I loved Russell Westbrook playing in Houston and that duo was great, him and James, I don't think Chris Paul should have ever been traded from the Rockets. Look how good he was the next season in OKC. I really think Chris Paul and James Harden should have, given it another shot for, a third season together. But I think there was a lot of blood and a lot of drama in that last offseason before the Chris Paul-Russell Westbrook trade happened between Houston and OKC. And I know that was a couple years ago. That was, 5 years ago this summer? That, in a couple months, that is 5 years ago. So, obviously they can, let bygones be bygones. But, and James, I feel like, is a lot different now than he was then. Of course, you could potentially argue that because James Harden was, honestly, I'll say this as a Rockets fan, as a James Harden fan. Back then, he was a selfish player who, liked to call the shots and was control of everything and, told the Rockets management how things were going to be done. He pushed different players out, Chris Paul was pushed out because, he wanted Westbrook. I mean, he controlled things. James Harden does not control things anymore. He's not even the first or second best player on his team. This is Paul George. I mean, obviously Paul George needs to be re-signed, but this is Paul George and Kawhi Leonard's team. James Harden, I mean, he's been on a couple of teams in the last couple of years where he is not that main guy, and I think he's changed a little bit. He's been on a Philadelphia team where Joel Embiid is the main guy. He is front and center. He's been on a Brooklyn Nets team where Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant are the main guys. They are front and center. It is not all about him. And now he's been on a Clippers team where the main guys are Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and they get the ball all the time. And not everything is about him. It's about them. They are, they run things. Obviously, James Harden is a facilitator, but they run things. So James, when he last played with Chris Paul, he was the guys that he has played with recently. He was that guy. But now he's turned into the guy who is, like the second or third guy on a team. So I feel like James has changed a lot. He was a guy who didn't like to pass the ball a lot in Houston. Obviously got a lot of assists, but was a ball hog in Houston, and he has turned into an amazing passer, one of the best passers in the NBA, one of the best led the NBA was top in the NBA in assists outside of Tyrese Halliburton. I think he was number 2 or number 3 in assists in the NBA this year. I think Trae Young and Tyrese Halliburton were up there, and I think James Harden was in that list as well. So James has changed a lot as a player since him and Chris played with each other. But I know there was a lot of drama there in that last offseason when, they played their last year in Houston and after that 2018-19 season. So that is something I thought about potentially Chris Paul and James Harden. Would they be able to work things together again? So that's another reason why I thought Kyle Lowry would be a better fit for the Clippers than Chris Paul would. But who's the better player in my opinion? Chris Paul is the better player. Who has the more experience winning in the NBA? Kyle Lowry. He's won an NBA championship. He's been to 3 conference finals in his career, 2 NBA finals. So he has the more playoff experience. The Clippers need that, in my opinion. Also, I don't think there's as much as drama. Kyle Lowry has great relationships with guys like Norman Powell and Kawhi Leonard and PJ Tucker, who he had great success with. And then, obviously, Chris Paul, he's got the issues with James Harden. Obviously, he's never talked bad about him, but there were issues there in Houston at the end. So let me know your thoughts on the potential signing for the Clippers in the comment section, and peace out.